Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku activated Breakpoint 1 for all. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The sky over Jaka's city was no longer blue. It was a bruised, swirling tapestry of gray dust, black smoke, and the sickening purple hue of decay. The air tasted like copper and ash. To breathe was to choke on the funeral pyre of a civilization that had thought itself safe. Izuku Midoriya hung suspended in the air, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. His gloves were tattered, his green suit stained with grime and blood, some his, mostly others. Below him, the ruins of the city stretched out like a graveyard, pulverized by the wave of destruction Tamura Shigaraki had unleashed the moment he woke up. Eraserhead, the shout ripped from Ryukyu's throat, ragged and desperate. Izuku's eyes, wide and stinging with grit, snapped to the center of the chaos. There, amidst the rubble, Shota Aizawa, the only dam holding back the flood, was faltering. A chunk of debris had taken his leg, he was bleeding out. But his eyes, glowing red, never blinked. He was staring down the monster, locking away the horrors of Shigaraki's quirks. But Shigaraki was no longer just a man with a quirk. He was a physically perfected Nomu, a god in human skin. Even without his powers, his raw strength was overwhelming. You heroes! Shigaraki's voice was distorted, a layering of his own rasp and the smooth, arrogant baritone of All for One. He lunged, the ground cracking under his bare feet. You're so persistent. Endeavor intercepted him, a comet of blue fire slamming into Shigaraki's side. It should have incinerated him. Instead, Shigaraki swatted the number one hero away as if he were a nagging insect. Endeavor crashed into a jagged slab of concrete, coughing blood. Sensei! Izuku screamed, firing a blast of air pressure to propel himself downward. Black whip erupted from his shoulders, seeking purchase, seeking to pull his teacher to safety. It happened in the space between heartbeats. A silver bullet, fired from a distance, struck Aizawa in the thigh. It carried the quirk-destroying drug. Aizawa didn't flinch, didn't blink, even as he hacked off his own leg to stop the spread. But the momentary shock, the sheer physiological trauma, caused his eyelids to flutter. A microsecond. That was all the Demon Lord needed. The red glow in Aizawa's eyes vanished. Checkmate, Shigaraki whispered. The air pressure dropped instantly. A wave of cold, malicious intent washed over the battlefield, heavy enough to crush lungs. The decay spread instantly, ripples of gray death turning stone to sand. But Shigaraki didn't just decay the ground. His back split open. Rivet stabs, black, red-veined tendrils of sharp energy, erupted from his spine like the wings of a nightmare. They weren't aiming for the heroes in general. They were intelligent. They were hungry. They were aiming for Izuku. One for all, the voice in Shigaraki's head crooned. Come to me, little brother. Izuku tried to move. Danger sense was screaming so loudly in his skull it felt like an ice pick was being driven through his temples. The warning was a blinding white noise that drowned out all thought. Move, move, move. He engaged one for all, full cowl. He pushed his legs to their limit. But the air was thick, and his body was exhausted. The tendrils were faster than sound. They closed the distance, spiraling like drills. Izuku saw death coming. It wasn't a slow realization. It was a sudden, cold fact. He couldn't dodge this. He was going to be skewered. Then, a blast of orange heat. An explosion, not of fire, but of kinetic force. DKU move! A figure blurred into his field of vision. Spiky ash-blonde hair. A jagged black mask. Katsuki Bakugo didn't think. He didn't calculate. He didn't weigh the pros and cons of his own survival. He simply reacted, his body moving before his mind could catch up. He shoved Izuku aside. The sound was wet and sickening. Thwack thwack thwack. 3 of the black tendrils punched through Bakugo's torso. One through the shoulder, one through the stomach, one grazing the heart. Time stopped. Izuku tumbled through the air, hitting the ground and rolling. He scrambled to his knees, his eyes wide, his pupils contracting until they were pinpricks. The world went silent. The roar of the battle, the wind, the screams, it all vanished. All he could see was Kaken, suspended in the air, impaled on the tendrils of the man Izuku was supposed to stop. Blood, bright, arterial red, sprayed into the air, painting the gray dust in grotesque vividness. Bakugo coughed, a wet, rattling sound, and looked down at the black spikes protruding from his chest. He looked surprised, as if he couldn't quite believe he had done it. Then, his eyes met Izuku's. They weren't angry. They weren't arrogant. They were fading. Stop trying to win this alone. Bakugo wheezed. Shigaraki retracted the tendrils violently. Bakugo's body went limp, falling from the sky like a broken doll. He hit the ground with a dull, final thud. Something inside Izuku Midoriya broke. It wasn't a poetic break. It wasn't a sorrowful crack. It was a catastrophic structural failure of the psyche. For a year, Izuku had been building walls. He had built walls of responsibility, of legacy, of the need to be the perfect vessel for All Might's power. He had carefully regulated his emotions, channeled his rage into focus, tempered his fear with logic. He kept the percentages in check. 45%. Don't break the bones. Keep the output steady. But seeing Katsuki Bakugo bleeding out in the dirt shattered the regulator. The rage didn't come as fire. It came as cold. Absolute, freezing zero. Izuku's vision tunneled. The edges of the world turned black. The only thing in color was Shigaraki, who was laughing, a high, manic sound that grated against Izuku's soul. Meaningless, Shigaraki scoffed, flicking Bakugo's blood off his tendrils. Another insect crushed on the windshield of progress. Don't worry, Izuku Midoriya. You're next. Then we are one. Izuku stood up. Inside the void of One for All, that misty, metaphysical realm where the souls of the past resided, a storm began to brew. Usually, the vestige world was quiet. The users stood in their chairs, watching, whispering guidance. But now, the realm was shaking. The mist was boiling away, replaced by jagged arcs of lightning that tore through the mental landscape. The first user, Yoichi, stepped forward, his face pale. Ninth? Izuku? You need to calm down. The power is fluctuating. It's unstable. No, Izuku's voice echoed in the mental realm. It wasn't the voice of a teenager. It was the voice of a legion. No more. Boy. The second user barked, his arms crossed. If you push past the limiter now, with your body in this state, you will detonate. You are at 45%. Going higher is suicide. I don't care, Izuku said. In the physical world, the green lightning crackling around Izuku's body began to change. It darkened, then brightened, shifting from emerald green to a blinding, incandescent white. The ground beneath his feet didn't just crack. It vaporized, turned to fine powder by the sheer pressure radiating from him. Izuku, listen to me. Nana Shimura cried out, her spirit form flickering. We hold the door closed for a reason. The singularity. It's too much for a human body to process all at once. If you open the floodgates, you won't just use the quirks. They will use you. Izuku looked at the mental door. The heavy, iron vault that kept the true, infinite depth of One for All contained. The safety valve. The governor. He didn't walk toward it. He didn't unlock it. He smashed it. Breakpoint, Izuku whispered in the real world. Crack. The sound was audible across the entire city block. It sounded like a suspension bridge snapping a cable. A pillar of white energy erupted from Izuku, piercing the clouds. The pressure wave flattened the surrounding buildings, blowing debris outward in a mile-wide radius. Shigaraki raised an arm to shield his eyes, actually forced to take a step back by the wind. What? Shigaraki hissed. What is this? Inside the pillar of light, Izuku was screaming. He wasn't screaming in anger anymore. He was screaming because every nerve ending in his body was being incinerated. The safety limiters, the subconscious barriers that prevented a human from using 100% of their muscle mass for fear of tearing themselves apart, were gone. The limiter on the quirk was gone. The synchronization rate jumped. 50%. 70%. 90%. Infinite. The light faded, revealing Izuku. But he looked wrong. His skin was flushed a deep, angry red, steam pouring from his pores as his sweat evaporated instantly. His eyes were completely white, the irises swallowed by the glow of the power. And the black whip. It wasn't trailing off him like a scarf anymore. The black energy had wrapped tight around his arms and legs, spiraling into the flesh, creating a jagged, pressurized exoskeleton. It was physically holding his bones together, compressing his muscles, acting as a splint for the force he was about to exert. Danger sense didn't chirp. It screamed, a continuous, agonizing tone that Izuku simply accepted as background noise. Float was active, not gently, but violently, repelling gravity so hard that chunks of earth were levitating around him. You heard him, Izuku said. The voice sounded like it was coming from everywhere at once. You heard everyone. Shigaraki grinned, though a bead of sweat rolled down his temple. And? What are you going to do, hero? Smash me? Shigaraki lunged, his hand outstretched, decay rotting the air ahead of him. He was fast. Faster than Gran Torino. Faster than eyes could track, but Izuku didn't dodge. He stepped in. FA gene triggered. Not charged by repetitive motion, but charged by the sheer kinetic vibration of Izuku's shivering, overloaded muscles. Izuku's fist met Shigaraki's stomach. There was no sound at first. The impact was so severe that it created a vacuum. Then, the air collapsed back in, and the boom shattered the windows of every building within 3 miles. Shigaraki folded. His eyes bulged, spitting blood and bile. He didn't fly backward, he couldn't. Izuku had grabbed his wrist with Black Whip at the moment of impact, anchoring him in place so he took 100% of the force. Crack! Izuku's right arm shattered. Both the radius and ulna snapped cleanly in half under the force of his own punch, but he didn't stop. The black tendrils tightened, jamming the jagged bone ends back into alignment, acting as artificial ligaments. The pain was absolute, a white-hot star in his brain, but the adrenaline of Breakpoint treated the pain as information, not a deterrent. Smash, Izuku whispered. He spun, using the centrifugal force of float and the snapping tension of Black Whip to slam Shigaraki into the ground. The earth didn't just crater, it liquefied. A shockwave of dirt and stone erupted upwards like a geyser. Shigaraki lay in the center of a crater 50 feet deep, his regeneration factor working overtime. Steam hissed from his body as bones knitted and flesh rewove itself. He tried to stand, coughing. You little brat, you're breaking yourself. Izuku descended. He didn't fall. He drove himself down with air pressure. He landed on Shigaraki's chest with both feet. St. Louis smash, ribs pulverized. Shigaraki gasped, his lungs flattened. Get off me! Shigaraki roared. A wave of radio waves, his master's quirk, burst from him, intended to jam communications and scramble brains. Izuku didn't flinch. The vestiges were screaming in his head, a chorus of 7 voices overriding the mental attack. Third user, use FA gene. Reinforce the legs. Fourth user, danger sense at 6 o'clock. Rivet stab. Fifth user, Black Whip. Bind his fingers. Don't let him touch you. Izuku was a conduit. He wasn't thinking, he was executing. A rivet stab shot up from the ground, aiming for Izuku's neck. Izuku didn't look. He simply twitched a finger. A bullet of compressed air force amplified by 100% power, obliterated the tendril, disintegrating it into black sludge. He reached down, grabbing Shigaraki by the face. Search, Shigaraki gasped, trying to steal the quirk, trying to find a weakness. All he saw when he looked at Izuku was a blinding sun that burned his mental vision. What are you? I am the one who stops you, Izuku said. He pulled back his left fist. Smoke scream vented from his body, not as a cloud to hide in, but as a superheated exhaust, blinding Shigaraki with stinging purple smog. Izuku punched. And punched. And punched. Detroit smash. Wyoming smash. Texas smash. He wasn't calling the names. The intent was raw violence. Each hit was a thunderclap. Each hit destroyed Shigaraki's flesh faster than it could heal. His jaw was gone. His chest was a concave ruin, but with every hit, the cost mounted. Izuku's left arm was purple and misshapen. The skin had split in a dozen places, unable to contain the expanding muscle mass. Blood streamed down his suit, mixing with the white lightning. His bones were grinding against each other, turning to powder. The only thing keeping his arms attached to his torso was the black whip armor, now woven so tight it was cutting off circulation. Midoriya! Stop! The voice was faint. It was Endeavor, watching from the rim of the crater with horror in his eyes. This wasn't a hero fighting a villain. This was an execution. It was a boy feeding himself into a woodchipper to kill the wolf on the other side. Izuku didn't hear him. He raised both hands, clasping them together. The white lightning flared to a crescendo, blinding everyone in the vicinity. He channeled everything: float to make himself light, FA gene to maximize kinetic output, the raw stockpiled power of 8 generations, into a double axe handle strike. Get out of my head! Shigaraki shrieked, the voice of all for one panic-stricken for the first time in a century. Izuku brought his hands down. The impact didn't make a sound. It was too loud for human ears to process. A sphere of pure force expanded from the impact point, vaporizing the rubble, the dust, and the air itself. A mushroom cloud of debris rose into the stratosphere. At the bottom of the pit, Shigaraki was a smear of gore and regeneration. His body was failing. The quirks inside him were rebelling, terrified of the force battering them. Retreat! The voice of All for One hissed in Shigaraki's mind. Tamura, run! He is insane. He is burning the candle at both ends. Run! Shigaraki, reduced to primal instinct, scrambled. He didn't try to fight. He activated a warping quirk, a liquid black ooze that swallowed him. Izuku swiped at him, his fingers tearing through the sludge, but he was a fraction of a second too slow. The slime collapsed, and Shigaraki was gone, warped away to a fail-safe location miles away. The silence that followed was deafening. The white lightning flickered, sputtered, and died. Izuku stood in the center of the glass-smooth crater. He was swaying. The adrenaline crash hit him like a physical blow. The breakpoint state disengaged. The safety limiters, realizing the danger was gone, slammed back into place, bringing with them the nervous system's report of the damage. Pain. It wasn't localized. It was total. It was the sensation of being dipped in acid while having every bone broken simultaneously. Izuku tried to take a step, but his leg didn't respond. His femur was fractured in 3 places. He looked down at his arms. They hung limp at his sides, swollen, purple, and twisted at unnatural angles. The black whip energy had dissipated, leaving nothing to hold the ruin of his body together. He coughed, and blood splattered onto the glass ground. Kaken! He rasped. The word was a bubble of blood. He fell forward. He didn't put his hands out to catch himself. He couldn't. He face-planted into the dirt. As consciousness faded, the edges of his vision graying out, he felt vibrations in the ground. People running. Heroes. Deku! Uraraka's voice. She was crying. Medical! We need medical down here now. Ida's voice. Commanding, terrified. Someone turned him over. It was Manuel, the water hero. He looked pale. Kid, oh God, kid, what did you do to yourself? Izuku looked up at the gray sky. The dust was settling. The rain was starting to fall, cold, cleansing drops that sizzled against his fever-hot skin. Inside the vestige world, the storm had passed. The 7 users stood in a circle around the flickering flame of One for All. It was dim. Fragile. He survived, the 4th user whispered, wiping sweat from his brow. Barely, the 1st user replied, looking at the cracks that had formed in the mental floor of the realm. He forced the singularity. He broke the point of no return. What does that mean? Nana asked. Yoichi turned to her, his face grim. It means the quirks are awake now. Fully awake. They won't go back to sleep. And his body is a shattered vessel trying to hold a star. In the real world, Izuku's eyes slid shut. His last thought wasn't of the pain, or the war, or the victory. It was the image of Bakugo, pushing him out of the way. I couldn't save him, Izuku thought as the darkness swallowed him. I broke everything, and I still couldn't save him. Darkness took him, and for a long time, there was nothing but the sound of shattering glass. 2 hours later, Field Medical Tent 4. The smell of antiseptic was losing the war against the smell of blood. Recovery girl, Chio Shizenji, had seen war before. She had seen All Might in his prime, tearing himself apart to save the world. She had patched up Endeavor's burns, Best Jeanist's punctures, and countless others. She was the iron grandmother of UA, unflappable and stern. But as she looked at the X-rays on the digital slate, her hands shook. "Status?" asked the surgeon standing opposite her. He was a top specialist from Central Hospital, flown in by helicopter. "It's catastrophic," Recovery Girl whispered. She pointed to the screen showing Izuku's arms. Comminuted fractures of the humerus, radius, and ulna in both arms. The bones didn't just break. They were pulverized by compressive force. "It looks like he put his arms inside a hydraulic press." She swiped to the next image. Shoulder girdles are dislocated and fractured. Clavicles shattered. But that's the structural damage. The muscular damage is worse. Rhabdomyolysis, the surgeon noted grimly. Muscle breakdown releasing myoglobin into the blood. His kidneys are at risk. Worse, Recovery Girl said. "Look at the nervous system scan." The screen showed the neural pathways of Izuku's arms and legs. Usually, they glowed a healthy blue on the scan. Izuku's were a chaotic web of red and black. "The nerves are fried," she said, her voice trembling. The bioelectricity he channeled. It was too much voltage. He burned out his own neural highways. "I can fix the bones. I can stitch the muscle. But the nerves?" She looked over at the bed where Izuku lay. He was intubated, wired to a dozen machines, wrapped in so much gauze he looked like a mummy. "He might never move his arms or legs again," the surgeon said quietly. "Even if he wakes up, he's a quadriplegic." Recovery Girl walked over to the bed. She reached out and brushed a lock of green hair off Izuku's sweaty forehead. "You foolish, foolish boy," she whispered, tears pricking her eyes. "I told you to find a way that didn't destroy you. Is this what it took? Is this the price of peace?" The heart monitor beeped, steady, but weak. Outside the tent, the rain intensified, washing the blood of Jaka City into the gutters. The war was technically paused. Shigaraki had retreated. The Paranormal Liberation Front was scattering, but the cost hung heavy in the air. Heroes were dead. Midnight was gone. Crust was gone. Bakugo was in the next tent over, surviving only by a miracle and Best Jeanist's emergency sutures on the field. He was stable, but unconscious. And Deku was broken, but deep inside the sleeping boy, beneath the pain and the silence, something stirred. A black tendril of energy slithered out from under the bandages on his right arm. It was thin, barely a wisp. It didn't move like a reflex. It moved with intent. It curled around the bed rail, tightening. The heart monitor skipped a beat. Inside the dream, the door was gone. The storm was over. But the house of One for All had changed. It was no longer a hallway of memories. It was a cockpit, and Izuku Midoriya, broken body and all, was strapped into the pilot's seat. The helicopter blades sliced through the heavy, rain-slicked air, a rhythmic thwop-thwop-thwop that sounded like a heartbeat struggling to maintain a rhythm. Inside the transport bay, the red emergency lights bathed everything in the color of fresh arterial blood. It was fitting. There was so much of it. Ochako Uraraka sat huddled on a fold-out bench, her knees pulled to her chest. Her hero costume was torn, caked in mud and dust, but she couldn't feel the cold. She couldn't feel anything except the vibration of the floor beneath her boots. Across from her, Shoto Todoroki stared at the metal floor, his mismatched eyes vacant. Frost was creeping up his right arm, uncontrolled, patterning the metal wall with delicate, icy fractals. He didn't seem to notice. Between them, strapped to a gurney that looked more like a containment unit, lay Izuku Midoriya. He didn't look like a person anymore. He looked like a ruin. Paramedics were swarming over him, their voices tight and clipped, speaking in a language of urgency that Uraraka couldn't parse. "BP is dropping. 70/40, pushing epinephrine. We're losing the rhythm. Look at the necrotic tissue on the left brachial, it's spreading. The heat coming off him is still cooking the cells." Uraraka watched a medic cut away the remains of Deku's glove. What was underneath made her stomach lurch violently. The arm was purple, black, and angry red. The shape was wrong. It was lumpy, swollen to twice its size, and bent in a way that suggested the bones inside were nothing more than gravel and a sack of skin. "Is he?" Uraraka's voice was a croak. She cleared her throat, tasting bile. Is he going to die? The lead paramedic, a woman with blood splattered on her visor, didn't look up. She was manually pumping a ventilation bag because Deku's chest wasn't rising on its own. We're keeping him here, sweetie, the medic said, though her tone lacked any sweetness. But you need to prepare yourself. His body temperature was 108 degrees when we picked him up. His muscles have basically liquidated. We're fighting just to keep his kidneys from shutting down. Shota looked up then. He won. The medic paused for a fraction of a second. What? He won, Shota repeated, his voice hollow. He beat Shigaraki. He did what my father couldn't do. What nobody could do. At the cost of everything, the medic muttered, injecting a clear fluid into Deku's foreline. The helicopter banked sharply. Through the small porthole window, the central hospital came into view, a beacon of white light in the stormy gloom. It was a fortress of healing, but as they descended, it felt more like a mausoleum. The waiting room 12 hours later. Time in a hospital waiting room is not linear. It is a stagnant pool of water, murky and suffocating. Tenya Ida paced. The squeak of his armored boots on the linoleum was the only sound in the private waiting area designated for UA students and staff. His engines were cold, but his legs ached with a phantom tension. He kept replaying the moment, the white lightning, the sound of the sky cracking open, and then the silence. The doors swung open. Tashinori Yagi, All Might, entered. He looked older than Ida had ever seen him. The gaunt man, usually a pillar of deflated but warm optimism, looked like a ghost. His skeletal frame was hunched, his oversized yellow suit hanging off him like laundry on a wire. His eyes, usually bright blue within their shadowed sockets, were dull and red-rimmed. All Might Sensei, Ida said, stopping his pacing. He tried to be the class representative. He tried to be strong. But his voice cracked. All Might didn't answer immediately. He walked to a plastic chair and collapsed into it, burying his face in his large, bony hands. Inko is in with the surgeons, All Might whispered. Recovery Girl is there too. And the top neurosurgeons in the country. How is Bakugo? Shoto asked from the corner. Young Bakugo is stable, All Might said, lifting his head. He took 3 stab wounds to the torso. One missed his heart by millimeters. Another punctured a lung. But he's tough. He woke up briefly an hour ago. He woke up? Uraraka asked, perking up slightly. All Might nodded slowly. He grabbed a nurse by the collar. He asked where Izuku was. When they wouldn't tell him, his heart rate spiked so high they had to sedate him again. All Might looked at the ceiling, his jaw tightening. He saved young Midoriya. At the start. But in the end, Deku saved everyone, Uraraka said fiercely. He saved everyone, All Might. He shouldn't have had to, All Might said, his voice dropping to a growl of self-loathing. I put that burden on him. I told him to be the symbol. I told him to be next, but I didn't teach him how to survive it. I taught him how to sacrifice. The doors opened again. This time, it was Recovery Girl. The diminutive heroine looked exhausted. Her syringe-shaped cane clacked against the floor. She wasn't wearing her usual smile. She looked grim. Tashinori, she said. All Might stood up so fast his chair tipped over. Chio. Is he? He is alive, Recovery Girl said. A collective breath, held for 12 hours, was released in the room. Uraraka sobbed once into her hands. However, Recovery Girl continued, her voice sharp enough to cut through the relief. We need to talk. All of you. She motioned for them to follow. They walked down the sterile hallway, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. They stopped in front of a large observation window looking into the ICU. Inside, Izuku was barely visible. He was encased in a specialized medical pod. Only his face was exposed, pale and bruised. His arms and legs were cast in thick, rigid polymers, suspended by wires to keep them elevated. The operation took 14 hours, Recovery Girl explained. We had to reconstruct the skeletal structure of both arms. We used metal pins, synthetic bone grafts, and quark-enhanced bonding agents. His legs were slightly better, but the femurs were fractured in multiple places. So he'll heal? Ida asked, hope rising. With your quirk, surely. My quirk accelerates the body's natural healing. Recovery Girl cut him off. It draws on the patient's stamina. Izuku has no stamina left. If I use my quirk on him now, it will kill him instantly. She turned to face them, her expression softening into pity. But the bones aren't the main problem. Bones knit. Skin grows back. She tapped the glass. The problem is the nervous system. What do you mean? Shoto asked. Izuku activated something, All Might said quietly. He called it Breakpoint. Recovery Girl nodded. Whatever he did, it bypassed the brain's safety governors. He ran a voltage through his body that exceeds human biological limits by a factor of 10. He didn't just burn his muscles, he burned the wiring. She took a deep breath. He has suffered total neuromuscular dissociation in all 4 limbs. The nerves are scorched. Dead. The signal from his brain can travel down the spine, but once it hits the brachial and lumbar plexuses, it hits a dead end. The silence in the hallway was heavier than the rubble of Jaka City. He's paralyzed, Uraraka whispered. The word hung in the air like a curse. Effectively, yes, Recovery Girl said. He will have sensation. In fact, he will likely be in chronic pain because the nerve endings are frayed, sending constant error signals to the brain. But motor control, voluntary movement? She shook her head. Unless there is a miracle of biology we haven't discovered yet. Izuku Midoriya will never walk or lift his arms again. All Might placed his hand on the glass, staring at his student. His successor. The boy who had run into the sludge villain without a quirk. He's a glass cannon, All Might murmured, tears finally spilling down his hollow cheeks. And he fired the final shot, the dreamscape. The void was loud. Usually, the inner world of One for All was silent, misty, and ethereal. It was a place of reverence. Now, it sounded like a hurricane. Izuku stood, or thought he stood, on a surface that felt like cracked obsidian. Above him, the sky was a roiling vortex of colors, green lightning, black smoke, red warning flares, and a pervasive, blinding white light. He looked down at his hands. In this world, they weren't broken. They were translucent, glowing with a faint pearlescent light. You're awake. Finally, Izuku turned. The first user, Yoichi Shigaraki, stood there. But he didn't look like the frail man from before. He looked transparent, his edges flickering like a bad hologram. Behind him stood the others. Kudo, the second, and the third user were arguing in hushed tones. Haikid Shinomori, the fourth, was clutching his head, looking like he had a migraine. Daigoro Banjo, the fifth, looked grim, his arms crossed. And the sixth was hiding his face in his high collar. Nana Shimura, the seventh, was weeping silently. Where am I? Izuku asked. His voice echoed, sounding like a chorus of many voices. Is this the vestige world? It's what's left of it, Kudo said sharply. He stepped forward, his gauntlets clanking. You reckless, idiotic child. Do you have any idea what you did? I stopped him, Izuku said. The memory of the battle rushed back. The anger. The white lightning. I stopped Shigaraki. You broke the seal. Kudo yelled, pointing at the sky where the storm raged. We told you the singularity was approaching. We told you the quarks were mixing, becoming volatile. And what did you do? You ripped the safety valve off. I had to. Izuku shouted back. He hurt Kaken. He was going to kill everyone. I didn't have a choice. There is always a choice, Kudo growled. And you chose mutual destruction. Enough, Yoichi said, stepping between them. He looked at Izuku with sad, ancient eyes. Izuku. Breakpoint wasn't just a power boost. It was a forced evolution. Yoichi gestured to the storm above. One for All has always been a stockpile of power passed down. A torch. But the quirks within it, Fa Gene, Danger Sense, Black Whip, they were separate tools in a belt. You could pick them up and put them down. Yoichi walked closer, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder. The touch felt like static electricity. When you activated Breakpoint, you fused them. You melted the tools together into a single, chaotic alloy. The singularity point? You crossed it. What does that mean? Izuku asked, fear creeping into his chest. It means nothing turns off anymore. Haikage spoke up, his voice strained. Danger sense. I can't dampen it. It's wide open. you're going to feel every malicious intent for miles, constantly. And float, Nana added, wiping her eyes. You aren't standing on the ground right now, Izuku. Look! Izuku looked down. He was hovering 3 inches off the obsidian floor. Gravity no longer applies to you unless you consciously force it to, Nana said. Your default state is flight. And Black Whip? Izuku asked, looking at Banjo. The bald hero sighed. It's the glue now, kid. It's not just a rope anymore. It's looking for something to hold together. It thinks your body is a broken vase, and it's trying to be the superglue. Izuku looked at his hands again. So, I'm strong? You are a god, Kudo spat. And you are a cripple. The world shook violently. A crack of thunder split the sky. You're waking up, Yoichi said, stepping back. Listen to me, Ninth. Your body is ruined. The hardware is destroyed. But the software has been upgraded to a level we never intended. What do I do? Izuku pleaded. How do I fix this? You don't fix it, Yoichi said, his voice fading as the white light swallowed the world. You endure it. You have to find a new way to move. If the nerves don't work, you have to build new strings. Strings? You're the puppet master now, Izuku. Banjo's voice echoed as the dream collapsed. Don't let the strings tangle. The hospital room 72 hours post-incident. The first thing Izuku noticed was the smell. Sterile. Sharp. The second thing was the pain. It wasn't a sharp pain. It was a deep, dull thrumming, like a bass speaker vibrating in his marrow. It felt like his arms were encased in concrete that was slowly shrinking. He opened his eyes. The ceiling was white. The lights were dimmed. The only sound was the rhythmic beep 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 of the heart monitor, and the soft hum of a ventilation unit. He tried to turn his head. It felt heavy, stiff. He saw a tuft of green hair near his hip. His mother. Inko Midoriya was asleep in a chair, her head resting on the side of his mattress. Her face was swollen from crying, clutching a handful of tissues even in sleep. Mom, he thought. I'm sorry. He wanted to reach out and touch her hair. To comfort her, he sent the command from his brain to his right arm. Lift. Reach. Touch. Nothing happened. Izuku frowned. He tried again. Lift the arm. The arm remained a heavy, dead weight on the bed. He couldn't even feel the sheets under his fingers. He could feel the burning ache deep inside, but the surface sensation? The proprioception? Gone. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in his chest. The heart monitor accelerated. Beep 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 beep. He tried the left arm. Nothing. He tried to wiggle his toes. Nothing. He tried to flex his quadriceps. Nothing. He was a head attached to a statue. No, he whispered. His throat was dry, raspy like sandpaper. No, no, no. The panic rose. It triggered danger sense. Suddenly, a spike of pain stabbed through his forehead. It wasn't external danger. It was the perception of danger. The quirk was reacting to his own panic, creating a feedback loop. The migraine hit him like a sledgehammer. Gah! Izuku gasped, squeezing his eyes shut. The noise woke Inko. She shot up, her eyes wide and terrified. Izuku! She scrambled to stand, hovering over him. Izuku! You're awake! Oh, my baby! Doctor! Doctor! Mom! Izuku wheezed, tears leaking from his eyes. I can't move. Inko froze. Her hands hovered over his cast-covered arm, afraid to touch him. Her face crumpled. Izuku, oh Izuku, why can't I move? He sobbed. Mom, tell me. Why can't I move? The door burst open. A doctor and 2 nurses rushed in, followed closely by All Might, who had been sleeping in the hall. Young Midoriya! All Might gasped, rushing to the other side of the bed. All Might! Izuku looked at his mentor, his eyes desperate. My arms. My legs. I can't feel them. I can't make them move. All Might's face fell. He looked at the doctor, then back to Izuku. He took a deep breath, his skeletal hand trembling as he placed it gently on Izuku's forehead. My boy, All Might said softly. The damage, it was severe. Recovery Girl did all she could. The surgeries were successful in saving your limbs, but the nerves are gone, Izuku finished, the knowledge settling on him like a lead blanket. The vestiges had told him. You are a cripple. We are hopeful for some recovery, the doctor said, though his voice lacked conviction. With physical therapy, and perhaps support items, but for now, the paralysis is total. Izuku stared at the ceiling. The tears flowed freely now, hot tracks running into his ears. He had won. He had saved them, and it had cost him everything. He was 16 years old, and his career as a hero was over. He was a torso. A burden. I'm sorry, Izuku whispered. I'm so sorry, All Might. I broke it. I broke the vessel. No, All Might said firmly, gripping the bed rail. You saved the world, Izuku. You are the greatest hero I have ever known. But I can't move, Izuku cried. How can I be a hero if I can't move? Inko was sobbing openly now, holding on to All Might's sleeve for support. Izuku closed his eyes. He wanted to wipe the tears from his mother's face. He wanted it so badly it hurt. Move, he screamed internally. Move, damn it! Use the strings. The sensation of Black Whip was different now. Before, it felt like releasing energy from a tap. Now, it felt like flexing a muscle he didn't know he had. It felt like the energy was inside his marrow. A low, dark hum filled the room. The doctor stepped back. What is that sound? Black sparks danced across Izuku's cast. Izuku? All Might watched, eyes widening. Izuku focused. He visualized the black energy not as a whip, but as a wire. He threaded it through his shoulder, down the destroyed pathways of his bicep, wrapping around the shattered radius, hooking into the dead tendons of his fingers. It was agonizing. It felt like threading a fishing hook through raw nerves. Izuku gritted his teeth, a guttural growl escaping his throat. Pull. Slowly, jerkily, his right arm lifted. It didn't move smoothly. It moved mechanically, unnatural and stiff, like a marionette being yanked by an amateur puppeteer. The cast clicked against the bed rail. Inko gasped, covering her mouth. Izuku! You moved! No, All Might whispered, his eyes narrowing. He saw the black energy leaking from the cast. He isn't moving the muscle. The arm rose, trembling violently. The black whip tendrils were visible now, pulsing under the skin, glowing faintly through the bandages. The hand reached out. Izuku's face was contorted in concentration and pain. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The migraine from danger sense was blinding. Float was trying to lift his torso off the bed, fighting the restraints. The hand reached Inko's face. The fingers, stiff and unyielding, brushed her cheek. A tendril of black energy, soft as smoke, wiped a tear away. Don't cry. Mom, Izuku gritted out, his voice straining with the effort of maintaining the construct. I'm still here. He held the position for 3 seconds. Then, his concentration broke. The arm fell like a stone, hitting the mattress with a dull thud. The black energy dissipated. Izuku fell back against the pillow, gasping for air as if he had just run a marathon. His heart rate monitor was screaming at 160 BPM. The room was silent, save for the monitor. The doctor was scribbling furiously on his clipboard. Inko was staring at him with a mix of horror and awe. But All Might looked at Izuku, and for the first time in days, there was a spark in his sunken eyes. It wasn't happiness. It was recognition. He recognized the madness. The drive. Young Midoriya, All Might said softly. Did you just manipulate your own limbs using Black Whip as an external nervous system? Izuku stared at the ceiling, panting, waiting for the agony in his arm to subside. The hardware is broken, Izuku whispered, repeating Yoichi's words. So I have to become the puppet master. He turned his head to look at All Might. His eyes were dull, exhausted, but the green fire deep within them hadn't gone out. It had just changed. It was colder now. I can't feel the arm, All Might, Izuku said. But I can force it to obey. That is... The doctor stammered. That is medically inadvisable. The strain on your psyche, the concentration required, it's unsustainable. Shigaraki is still out there, Izuku said. The weakness in his voice was gone, replaced by a flat, terrifying certainty. He looked at his dead legs. He could feel Float itching under his skin, wanting to lift him. He could feel Fa gene storing the energy of his erratic heartbeat. He's still out there, Izuku repeated. And I'm the only one who can kill him. Izuku, stop, Inko begged, grabbing his shoulder. You've done enough. You can't move. Look at you. I don't need to move, Ma, Izuku said, closing his eyes as exhaustion dragged him back down. I just need to fly. As sleep claimed him again, the danger sense settled into a dull, rhythmic throb at the base of his skull. It was a warning, the war wasn't over. And the weapon that would end it had just been forged in a hospital bed, brittle, broken, and more dangerous than ever. He was a glass cannon. And he was already loaded. The silence of room 402 in Central Hospital was not peaceful. It was heavy, pressurized, like the air inside a submarine diving past its crushed depth. Izuku Midoriya lay in the center of the room, staring at a water stain on the ceiling tile. He had named the stain. It looked vaguely like All Might's hair tuft. He had been staring at it for 5 days. Lift, the physical therapist said. His voice was patient, the kind of practiced patience that wore thin around the edges. Izuku focused. He didn't focus on the muscle, that was useless. The connection between his brain and his quadriceps was a burnt bridge. The signal traveled down his spine and fell into an abyss at his hip. Instead, he focused on the hum. Inside his marrow, the one for all stockpile sat like a heavy, molten stone. It was no longer quiet. Since the breakpoint, the power didn't sleep. It vibrated. It whispered. Black whip, Izuku thought. The sensation was distinct. It felt like sliding a cold, thin wire through his own veins. He visualized the energy uncoiling from his core, snaking down his thigh, bypassing the dead nerves, wrapping around the femur, and hooking into the patellar tendon. Contract. It wasn't a muscle contraction. It was a winch tightening. His leg jerked upward. It didn't rise smoothly. It snapped up to a 45-degree angle with a mechanical violence that made the bed frame rattle. The motion was too fast, too rigid. It lacked the subtle micro-adjustments of biological movement. Okay, the therapist said, flinching slightly. He scribbled on his clipboard, avoiding Izuku's eyes. That's movement. But Midoriya, the EMG readings are flat. Your muscles aren't firing. You're moving the limb externally. Does it matter? Izuku asked. His voice was raspy. He hadn't used it much. The therapist sighed, clicking his pen. It matters because you aren't healing the paralysis. You're just hauling your body around like luggage. It's putting immense strain on your skeletal structure. If you keep doing this, you're going to grind your joints to dust. I need to walk, Izuku said, lowering the leg. The descent was just as jerky, a sudden drop, caught by the black whip at the last second before it hit the mattress. You need to rest, the therapist corrected. The nerve damage is catastrophic. We are hoping for regeneration, but stressing the system with quirk usage is counterproductive. Please. Just try to sleep. The therapist left. The door clicked shut. Izuku was alone again. Except he wasn't. He was never alone anymore. He's right, you know. The fifth user, Daigoro Banjo, said. His voice echoed inside Izuku's skull, overlaid on the hum of the air conditioner. You're grinding your gears. You're treating your bones like tent poles. Necessity dictates action. The second user, Kudo, cut in. His voice was sharper, colder. The body is compromised. We adapt. If the biology fails, the energy compensates. It hurts him. Nana Shimura's voice was soft, laced with a mother's worry. Look at his heart rate. Just lying there, moving one leg, he spiked to 120. Quiet, Izuku whispered to the empty room. He closed his eyes, but darkness brought no relief. With his eyes closed, the danger sense became the dominant input. Since the breakpoint, the fourth user's quirk had broken its knob. It was stuck on maximum volume. It wasn't just danger to him. It was danger. The abstract concept. He could feel a surgeon 3 floors down making a risky incision. He could feel a driver 2 miles away swerving on wet pavement. He could feel the malice of a petty villain robbing a convenience store in the next district. It was a constant, throbbing migraine behind his eyes, a white noise of potential suffering. And then there was float. Izuku grabbed the metal railings of the bed with his clumsy, blackwood puppeteered hands. He held on tight. If he let go, he would drift. Gravity had filed a divorce from Izuku Midoriya. The breakpoint had fused Nana's quirk to his baseline physiology. He was buoyant. Neutral buoyancy, mostly, but if he got agitated, he became lighter than air. The night before, he had a nightmare about Shigaraki. He woke up pressed against the ceiling tiles, the 4 lines pulled taut, alarms blaring. The nurses had to drag him down like a helium balloon. Now he slept strapped down. I have to master it, Izuku muttered. He focused on his right hand. It lay on the white sheet, scarred and heavy. Thread the needle, he told himself. He pushed the black whip energy into his forearm. He felt it slither between the radius and ulna. He split the tendril into 5 microscopic threads, sending one to each fingertip. Curl. The index finger twitched. Then the middle. The thumb snapped across. It was agonizing. It felt like moving through molasses filled with broken glass. The feedback loop, using his mind to control the quirk to control the meat, was exhausting. It required a level of multitasking that made full call look like child's play. He made a fist. Then he opened it. He did it again. Faster. Snap. Open. Snap. Open. Blood trickled from his nose. The mental strain was rupturing capillaries. Careful, ninth. The first user, Yoichi, warned. You are rewriting your own proprioception. If you push too hard, you will dissociate completely. You will forget what it feels like to be human. I don't need to feel human, Izuku whispered, staring at his trembling, puppet hand. I need to be useful. Day 14, the aquarium. The rehabilitation gym was a large, sunlit room filled with parallel bars, yoga balls, and heroes trying to learn how to be people again. Izuku was the center of attention, though everyone tried to pretend he wasn't. He was strapped into a walking harness, suspended from a track in the ceiling. His legs hung limp, toes dragging on the mat. Okay, Midoriya, the rehab specialist said. She was a woman with a mutation quirk that gave her 4 arms, useful for catching falling patients. Let's try to engage the hip flexors. Visualize the step. Izuku hung there. He looked like a marionette with its strings cut. He looked across the room. Best Jeanist was there. The number 3 hero was missing a lung, heavily bandaged, practicing breathing exercises. He caught Izuku's eye and offered a stiff, singular nod. Respect. And pity. Izuku hated the pity. It burned in his gut hotter than the one for all embers. Visualize, the specialist repeated. No, Izuku thought. Visualization is for people with nerves. He closed his eyes. The migraine of danger sense throbbed. He pushed it aside, diving into the stockpile. Black whip. Full skeletal integration. He didn't just thread the legs this time. He wrapped his torso. He created an internal lattice of energy, a secondary muscular system made of pure force. Midoriya? The specialist asked, seeing the black sparks sizzle around his hospital gown. Step. Izuku didn't engage a muscle. He yanked his own shin forward with the quirk. His foot slammed onto the mat. Step. The other foot jerked forward. He began to walk. It was grotesque. His movements were disjointed, violent. His knees didn't bend smoothly. They snapped into position. His arms swung out of sync, propelled by unseen tethers. He looked like a stop-motion animation with missing frames. He wasn't walking. He was haunting the room. Midoriya, stop. The specialist called out, reaching for him with 2 of her arms. Your heart rate is spiking. You're hurting yourself. Izuku didn't stop. He walked faster. Left. Right. Left. Right. The floor tiles cracked under his feet. He wasn't just stepping, he was impacting. Without sensory feedback, he couldn't gauge how much force he was putting into the ground. He was stomping with enough force to shatter concrete. Faster. He broke into a run. The harness cable snapped taut, whining as he dragged the sealing mechanism along the track. Sparks rained down from the rail. DKU! The shout came from the doorway. Izuku froze. Or rather, he cut the power. His body collapsed instantly, saved only by the harness straps digging into his armpits. He swung there, limp, panting, sweat pouring off his face. He looked up. Ochako Uraraka stood in the doorway. She was wearing civilian clothes, a pink sweater and jeans. She held a basket of fruit. but her knuckles were white where she gripped the handle. Behind her stood Tsuyu Ajiri. They stared at him. They had seen the walk. They had seen the black energy leaking from his skin, the unnatural, jarring rhythm of his gait. They looked terrified. Uraraka-san, Izuku wheezed. He tried to smile, but he couldn't feel his face properly. The smile came out lopsided, manic. I was just getting some exercise. Uraraka walked over. She didn't float. Her steps were heavy. She stopped in front of him. That wasn't exercise, she whispered. She reached out, hesitating, then touched his arm. It was cold. Deku, that looked like you were fighting your own body. I have to, Izuku said. If I don't force it, it won't move. But you're hurting yourself, Tsuyu said, stepping up. Kero. We can hear your bones creaking from the doorway. It's fine, Izuku lied. It's just calibration. I'm figuring out the tension. Calibration? Uraraka's voice rose. You're not a machine, Deku. You're a person. You're supposed to be healing. I don't have time to heal. Izuku snapped. The yell silenced the gym. Best Jeanist stopped his breathing exercises. The other patients turned. The danger sense flared. Izuku flinched, grabbing his head with a jerky hand. The anger in the room, his own, Uraraka's fear, the confusion of others, was feeding the sensor. Shigaraki is gone, Izuku said, his voice dropping to a trembling whisper. But he's not dead. I can feel him. Sometimes, at night. I can feel the decay. It's like a phantom limb. He's out there. He's healing. And he's going to come back. He looked at Uraraka, his green eyes dull and intense. If I'm still in this bed when he comes back, then everyone dies. You die. Mom dies. Everyone. Uraraka dropped the fruit basket. Apples rolled across the gym floor. She wrapped her arms around his suspended, broken body. She hugged him tight, burying her face in his chest. We don't care about Shigaraki right now. She sobbed. We care about you. Why can't you just let us save you for once? Why do you have to be the one bleeding? Izuku hung there, his feet dangling inches off the floor. He wanted to hug her back. He wanted to wrap his arms around her and tell her it would be okay, but he was exhausted. The effort of the walk had drained his stockpile. He physically couldn't lift his arms, so he just hung there, limp in her embrace, while the black smoke of his quirk dissipated into the air. Because, Izuku whispered, I'm the only one who can handle the singularity. Day 20, the visitor. It was raining. A heavy, gray deluge that battered the windows of room 402. Izuku sat in a specialized wheelchair. It was high-tech, provided by the Shield Foundation, likely a gift from Melissa. It supported his neck and arms, but Izuku wasn't using the controls. He was floating 2 inches above the seat cushion. He was practicing maintaining a constant, low-level output afloat to relieve the pressure sores on his legs. The door opened. All Might entered. He carried 2 cups of tea from the vending machine. He looked better than he had a week ago, but the shadow of guilt still clung to him like a second skin. Young Midoriya, All Might said, placing the tea on the table. How are you feeling today? Hovering, Izuku joked weakly. All Might forced a smile. He sat on the edge of the bed. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the rain. I spoke to Principal Niza today, All Might started. He clasped his hands together. And Aizawa? How is Aizawa-sensei? Izuku asked. He is adapting. He lost an eye. And the leg. But he is alive. He's already talking about expulsion rates for the next year. All Might chuckled, but it sounded hollow. That's good, Izuku said. Niza has a proposal, All Might said, his tone shifting. He wants to transition you to the General Studies Department. Or perhaps, a teaching assistant role. Izuku didn't blink. He didn't look surprised. Retirement. Safety, All Might corrected. Izuku, look at the reality. You cannot walk. You cannot hold a pen without using a quirk that tears your muscles apart. The war is over for you, is it? Izuku asked. Yes. All Might stood up, frustration breaking through. You did your part. You defeated the greatest evil in history. You bought us time. Let the pros handle the cleanup. Let your classmates handle the future. You have given enough. Shigaraki isn't dead, Izuku said calmly. We don't know that. I know that, Izuku interrupted. He tapped his temple. Fourth user. Danger sense. It's not just a proximity alarm anymore, All Might. It's a radio. And I'm tuned into his frequency. Izuku turned the wheelchair, not with the joystick, but by using air force to gently puff air from his fingers, spinning the chair around to face All Might. He is healing. Faster than I am. And he has All for One inside him. Do you think a prison, or a hiding spot, will keep him down? He's coming for One for All. He's coming for me. Then we will protect you. All Might stepped forward, pleading. Yurei is a fortress. We will turn it into the most secure location on Earth. We will keep you safe. And what happens when he comes knocking? Izuku asked. His voice was cold, logical. What happens when he brings the decay wave? If I am at Yurei, Yurei falls. If I am near Mom, Mom dies. If I am near you. Izuku looked at the skeletal man who had given him everything. I can't be near you, All Might. Don't say that, All Might whispered. Don't you dare say that. I am a bomb, Izuku said. And the fuse is lit. I won't let you leave, All Might said firmly. I am your teacher. I am your guardian. I forbid it. Izuku looked at him. For a moment, the green in his eyes flashed with a white, electric brilliance. Watch me, Izuku said. Then he moved. It wasn't the jerky, mechanical movement from the gym. He had been practicing. Black whip exploded from his shoulders, not as ropes, but as a cloak. It wrapped around his torso, his arms, his legs. It tightened, creating a sleek exoskeleton of dark energy. Izuku stood up. He didn't push off the chair. Float lifted him. Black whip stabilized him. Fa gene pulsed in his joints, ready to release kinetic energy for movement. He hovered a foot off the ground, the black tendrils writhing around him like living smoke. His broken limbs were held in perfect suspension by the power. He looked terrifying. He didn't look like a hero. He looked like a revenant, young Midoriya. All Might breathed, taking a step back. I can't walk, Izuku said, his voice distorted by the energy pressure in the room. So I won't walk. I'll fly. I can't feel my hands. So I'll use these claws. I am done being Izuku Midoriya, the UA student. He floated toward the window. You told me to be the symbol of peace, Izuku said, looking at his reflection in the dark glass. But peace is fragile. It needs a wall to protect it. I'm not the symbol anymore, All Might. He turned back, tears streaming down his face, contrasting the terrifying power radiating from him. I'm the wall. And the wall has to be outside the city. Izuku, please. All Might reached out, but danger sense spiked. Izuku gasped, clutching his chest. It was sharp. Immediate. Targeting. Not Shigaraki. Something else. Something seeking. They found me, Izuku said. The assassins. They know I'm here. Who? Tartarus escapees. Dictator. Lady Nagant. Someone is watching the hospital. Izuku floated to the closet. With a flick of a black tendril, the door ripped open. His hero costume, repaired, washed, but still tattered, hung there. The mask with the long ears. The iron saws. I have to go, Izuku said. If I stay, the hospital becomes a battlefield. You aren't ready! All Might shouted. You can barely control it. I don't need control, Izuku said, pulling the costume toward him with a whip. I have anger. And right now, that's enough. The dreamscape. While Izuku dressed, a painful, slow process assisted by the tendrils, his mind drifted inward. The vestiges were gathered around the central fire of One for All. He's leaving, Nana said softly. He's really leaving. He has to, Yoichi said. He looked at the second user. Kudo. Are you ready? The second user nodded. He stood with his back to the group, looking out into the void. Meta-liberation war caused a shift. The boy's will is overpowering the safety protocols. If he goes out there, into the mud and the rain, he is going to use gearshift. He's not ready for gearshift, the third user warned. His heart will explode. Then we hold him together, Kudo said. He turned, his eyes blazing. We are no longer teachers. We are his life support. We are the battery. If he wants to run into hell, we strap on our boots and we march. He's discarding his humanity, Banjo said, rubbing his bald head. Look at him. He's moving his body like a puppet. It's sad, man. It's necessary, Yoichi said. The era of the smiling hero is over. The era of the weeping hero begins. The departure. Izuku stood on the balcony of room 402. The rain lashed against his mask. The green hood was pulled up. The yellow cape, now tattered and stained, whipped in the wind. He wore the Gran Torino cape. He wore the mid-gauntlets Melissa had sent, clamped over his shattered arms to help regulate the air force output. He looked down at the street. He could feel them. 3 blocks away. A scout. A villain with a sensory quirk, reporting back to All for One. The boy is here. The boy is broken. I'm not broken, Izuku whispered to the wind. He turned back to the room. All Might stood there, defeated. He looked small. I left letters, Izuku said. For Mom. For everyone in Class A. Please, give them to them. Izuku, All Might choked out. You don't have to do this alone. Yes, I do, Izuku said. One for all is a cursed power, All Might. It brings death to everyone around it. You shielded me from that truth. But I see it now. He stepped onto the railing. I'm going to break the curse, Izuku said. Or I'm going to die trying. Wait. Izuku didn't wait. He leaned back and let gravity take him, for just a second. Then, float caught him. F.A. Jean loaded his legs. Black Whip exploded outward, grabbing the gargoyles of the adjacent building. With a sonic boom that shattered the glass of room 402, Izuku launched himself into the stormy night. He didn't fly like a bird. He flew like a bullet. He ricocheted off the building opposite, the black tendrils pulling him through the air with violent, predatory speed. He landed on the roof 3 blocks away. The villain scout, a man with lizard skin and binoculars, gasped, turning around. He didn't see a hero. He saw a monster bathed in green lightning and white steam. He saw a figure held upright by writhing black shadows. He saw 2 glowing green eyes in the darkness. Target located, the villain stammered into his radio. He's... Izuku raised a hand. He didn't feel the fingers. He just willed the air to move. Delaware smash. A blast of air pressure slammed the villain into the HVAC unit, knocking him unconscious instantly. Izuku stared down at the unconscious man. He felt nothing. No triumph. No fear. Just the dull, throbbing ache of his ruined nerves and the screaming of the danger sense pointing north, toward the villains. 1, Izuku counted. He crouched, the black whip coiling like springs around his legs, preparing to launch. The radio on the villain's belt crackled. Report? Did you find the boy? Izuku crushed the radio with a tendril. He looked at the city skyline, dark and foreboding. I'm here, he whispered. He launched himself into the sky, a green comet streaking across the darkness. Back in the hospital room, All Might fell to his knees amidst the shattered glass. He clutched the stack of letters to his chest, weeping into the silence. On the top envelope, written in shaky, jagged handwriting that betrayed a hand forced to move by telekinesis, was a single name, Cats.Yukai. The strings were cut. The puppet was loose. And the play was about to become a tragedy. The shattered glass of the hospital window lay on the wet pavement 4 stories down like diamonds scattered in the mud. The alarm was blaring, a shrill, rhythmic shriek that cut through the storm. Inside room 402, All Might was a statue of grief. He clutched the railing of the balcony, the wind whipping his oversized suit, rain plastering his gaunt hair to his skull. He watched the green streak of light recede into the urban darkness, disappearing behind the skyline of a city that was holding its breath. Don't go, Toshinori Yagi whispered, the words lost to the thunder. Please, my boy, don't go. But the boy was gone. In his place, a vessel had departed. The rooftops 3 minutes later. Movement was no longer a subconscious act for Izuku Midoriya. It was a complex mathematical equation solved in real time by a mind fracturing under the weight of 8 ghosts. Input, trajectory, north-northwest. Variable, wind speed, 40 miles per hour. Status of vessel, critical. Izuku didn't run across the rooftop. Running required the rhythmic firing of quadriceps and calves, the impact of bone on concrete. His bones couldn't take the impact. His nerves couldn't send the signal. Instead, he skimmed. He hovered 6 inches above the gravel roof, suspended by the float quirk that was now permanently fused to his gravity center. To move forward, he didn't push off the ground. He grabbed the air in front of him with Black Whip and pulled. It was a grotesque form of locomotion. He looked like a spider swinging through a horizontal canyon. The black tendrils shot out from his back, burying themselves into water towers, vents, and parapets, yanking his limp body forward at 60 miles per hour. Careful on the turn. The fifth user, Banjo, barked in his head. Centrifugal force is going to snap your neck if you don't brace. Bracing. Izuku thought back. He commanded the Black Whip to wrap around his cervical spine, creating a temporary neck brace. He banked sharply around the skyscraper, the G-force immense. His head didn't bobble. It was locked in place by the energy. Below him, the streets were empty. Martial law had been declared, but it was hardly necessary. People were too terrified to go outside. The green ghost was just a rumor, but the fear was real. Danger sense spiked. It wasn't the sharp stab of a sniper. It was a dull, heavy throb. Obstruction. Izuku slowed, firing a blast of air force from his palms to decelerate. He drifted to a halt on the edge of a wide commercial building. Standing on the adjacent roof, blocking his path to the city limits, was a wall. Not a wall of brick. A wall of people. Class 1A. They were drenched. Their hero costumes were soaked through, colors muted by the gray rain. They stood in a phalanx, a formation they had practiced 100 times, but this time, the enemy wasn't a villain bot or a PLF soldier. It was their friend. Deku. The voice belonged to Ochako Uraraka. She stood at the center, her knuckles white. Beside her was Tenya Ida, his engines idling with a low hum. Shoto Todoroki stood with his right side steaming in the cold rain. Eijiro Kurishima had his arms hardened, not in aggression, but in preparation. Izuku hung in the air, his feet dangling freely, the toes of his iron boots pointing down at the wet concrete. He didn't land. He floated there, a ghost in a tattered yellow cape. The black energy of his quirk writhed around him like a nest of agitated vipers, holding his broken arms in a crossed position over his chest. Move, Izuku said. His voice was distorted. The mask, the one with the long ears, was damaged. The respirator hissed with every breath. It sounded mechanical. Cold. We aren't moving, Midoriya, Ida shouted, stepping forward. We heard the glass break. We knew you would try this. This is irrational. You require medical attention. I require distance, Izuku replied. The danger sense was giving him a migraine. Their concern was registering as intent to impede. To the quirk, they were obstacles. They're trying to help. Nana Shimura whispered in his mind. Izuku, look at them. They're terrified. I know, Izuku thought. That's why I have to leave. Midoriya, Shoto said, his voice cutting through the rain. You can't walk. We saw the charts. You're piloting yourself with your quirk. How long until you run out of mana? How long until you drop out of the sky? Long enough to draw Shigaraki away from you, Izuku said. He drifted forward, the black tendrils shifting aggressively. I'm a beacon, Todoroki-kun. Shigaraki can hear me. He can smell one for all. If I stay at UA, he brings the war to the dorms. He turns the school into a crater. I won't let that happen. So you die alone in a ditch? Kurishima yelled, slamming his hardened fists together. That's not manly, dude. That's suicide. It's sacrifice, Izuku corrected. He tried to fly over them. He engaged float to maximum lift, rising rapidly into the air. Zero. Tsu! Ida commanded. Hanta Zero launched tape. Tsuyu Ajui launched her tongue. They aimed not to hurt, but to tether. The tape wrapped around Izuku's ankle. The tongue wrapped around his waist. Got him! Zero yelled. Pull him down! They pulled. Usually, against a human opponent, this would work. But Izuku wasn't operating on human physics anymore. Gear shift, low gear. The second user, Kudo, whispered. Anchor the mass. Izuku didn't budge. He defied the tension. He activated a fraction of the second user's quirk, altering the inertia of his own body. To Zero and Tsuyu, it felt like they had hooked a mountain. Izuku looked down at the tethers. Let go, he said. Black Whip lashed out, not at them, but at the tape and the tongue. The precision was surgical. The black energy severed the tape instantly. For Tsuyu, the whip gently but firmly uncoiled her tongue, pushing her back with a pulse of air pressure. Tsuyu stumbled back, retracting her tongue. He's so heavy, Karo. We have to stop him. Uraraka cried. He's going to kill himself. She ran forward. She didn't care about the danger. She activated her quirk on herself, making herself weightless, and leaped into the air, aiming to tackle him. Deku! Please! Just look at us. She was close. She could see his eyes through the lenses of the mask. They were glowing with that terrible, blinding white light. Izuku watched her come. Time seemed to slow down. Don't hurt her, Yoichi pleaded. Neutralize, Kudo ordered. Izuku didn't strike her. He didn't dodge. He simply released a pulse of raw presence. It wasn't Conqueror's haki or magic. It was the sheer, terrifying pressure of the singularity. The air around him became heavy, saturated with the density of his power. Uraraka hit the pressure wall 5 feet away from him. It felt like hitting a gust of wind from a jet engine. She was blown back, tumbling through the air until Ida caught her. I can't look at you, Izuku said, turning his back on them. If I look at you, I might want to stay. Then stay, you damn nerd! The shout came from the shadows of the roof access door. It was a voice made of gravel and gunpowder. Katsuki Bakugo stepped out into the rain. He wasn't wearing his costume. He was in a hospital gown, ripped at the back to accommodate the bandages wrapped around his torso. He was barefoot. He was leaning heavily on a metal 4-pole he had dragged up the stairs. He looked like a corpse that was too angry to die. Kaken, Izuku whispered. The name slipped out before he could stop it. Bakugo limped forward, dragging the pole. Blood was already seeping through the bandages on his chest where the rivet stabs had pierced him. You think? Bakugo wheezed, pausing to cough wetly. You think you're the only one who can take a hit? You think you're some kind of martyr messiah? You shouldn't be walking, Izuku said, his voice shaking. Your lung, the doctor said. Shut up! Bakugo roared. Explosions crackled weakly in his palms. I don't care what the extra said. I woke up, and they told me you were leaving. Leaving? Bakugo stopped 10 yards away. He looked up at the floating figure of his childhood friend. He saw the broken limbs dangling. He saw the puppet strings of black energy. He saw the reflection of his own weakness. I took that stab, Bakugo said, his voice dropping to a growl. I took it so you wouldn't turn into this. So you wouldn't have to break yourself again. And what do? You snap your own leash and run off to play God? I'm not playing God, Izuku said. I'm cleaning up the mess. By dying? Bakugo spat. That's your plan? You use that breakpoint crap again, and you're dust. You know it. All Might knows it. Even these idiots know it. It doesn't matter, Izuku said. As long as All for One dies with me. It matters to me. Bakugo dropped the 4-pole. He raised his right hand. He pulled the pin on an imaginary gauntlet. He ignited a blast, larger than he should have been able to muster. He launched himself. He didn't care about the pain. He flew at Izuku, aiming a blast right for his face. Wake up, Deku! Izuku watched him. He saw the trajectory. He saw the desperation. Fag, the third user whispered. Charge legs. Release. Izuku didn't move his muscles. He triggered the kinetic energy stored in his prosthetic exoskeleton of energy. Zoom. To the class, it looked like teleportation. 1 second, Izuku was there. The next, there was a sonic boom, a displacement of air that blew the reins sideways. Bakugo passed through the empty space, his explosion detonating harmlessly against the storm clouds. He crashed onto the wet roof, sliding, scraping his bare skin against the gravel. He rolled over, gasping, looking around wildly. Where? Behind you, Shoto warned. Bakugo froze. Izuku was hovering directly behind him. He hadn't turned around. He was facing away from Bakugo, looking out toward the city. You're too slow, Kaken, Izuku said. The words cut deeper than any knife. It wasn't an insult. It was an observation. A cold, hard fact delivered by a being who had transcended human limits. Bakugo stared at Izuku's back. He saw the way the black whip pulsed, holding Izuku's spine straight. You! Bakugo's voice broke. You're looking down on me again. No, Izuku said softly. I'm looking ahead. Because if I look back, I'll crumble. Izuku raised his hand, the arm lifted by the tendrils like a crane. From the folds of his yellow cape, a bundle of envelopes fell. They were sealed in a Ziploc bag to protect them from the rain. They hit the puddle between Bakugo and the rest of the class with a splash. Read them, Izuku said. Or burn them. It doesn't matter. Deku, wait! Uraraka screamed, breaking free from Ida's grip, but the danger sense was screaming too loud now. The villains were moving. Shigaraki was waking up somewhere in the dark. The game of cat and mouse had begun, and Izuku had to be the mouse that broke the trap. Full cowl, 100%. Breakpoint output, 20%. The vestiges synchronized. The white lightning turned the rooftop into day. The heat vaporized the rain instantly, creating a cloud of steam. Stay safe, Izuku said. Boom, the roof cracked. The air pressure shattered the windows of the building across the street. By the time the steam cleared, Izuku was gone. Just a green star fading into the storm clouds, moving faster than sound. The aftermath. The silence on the roof was absolute, save for the rain. Bakugo lay in the puddle, staring at the sky where the green light had vanished. His hand was outstretched, fingers trembling. He slammed his fist into the gravel. Once. Twice. Damn it! He screamed. A raw, tearing sound. Damn it! Uraraka walked over to the plastic bag. She picked it up with shaking hands. Inside were 19 letters. One for each member of Class A. And one for Aizawa. She opened the bag. She pulled out the one with her name on it. The handwriting was barely legible, jagged, spiked strokes made by a hand that couldn't feel the pen, controlled by a mind forcing the ink onto the page. Uraraka-san, thank you for the fruit. Thank you for telling me I looked like a hero when I felt like nothing. But the float quirk, it's not like zero gravity. It's lonely. It separates you from the earth. I have to go where gravity can't hold me down anymore. Please don't follow me. If you follow me, you'll see things that will make you stop smiling. And I need you to keep smiling. For everyone else, Izuku. She pressed the letter to her chest, sinking to her knees in the rain. Idiot, she sobbed. You absolute idiot. Shoto picked up the letter addressed to Katsuki. He walked over to Bakugo, who was still pounding the ground, tears mixing with the rain and blood on his face. Bakugo, Shoto said quietly. He held out the letter. Bakugo snatched it. He didn't open it gently. He ripped it open. The letter was short. The paper was wrinkled, as if sweat had dripped on it during the writing. Kaken, you were right. I was always chasing you. I wanted to be you. Strong. Victorious. The one who always wins. But you were wrong about one thing. You said I shouldn't try to win alone. But one for all isn't a quirk for a team. It's a quirk for a sacrifice. You saved my life, so now I have to spend it. Don't come after me. You can't keep up with where I'm going. Become the #1 hero. Win. Save everyone. I'll handle the shadows. Deku. Bakugo crumpled the letter in his fist. He squeezed it until his knuckles popped. Can't keep up? Bakugo whispered. He forced himself to stand. His legs were shaking. His chest was on fire. Can't keep up? He looked at the class. They were all broken in their own way. Momo was crying. Sato was punching a vent. Jiru was staring at the ground. He thinks he's protecting us, Bakugo growled. He turned to face them, his eyes burning with a terrifying resolve. He thinks he can just cut the strings and float away? Bakugo shoved the crumpled letter into his pocket. He's wrong. He's not a god. He's a glitch. And we're going to fix him. How? Ida asked, wiping rain from his glasses. Did you see him? He moved faster than my Recipro Turbo. He has 7 quirks, Bakugo. He's unreachable. He's bleeding, Bakugo said. I saw it. When he took off. The pressure, it cracked his armor. He's leaking energy. Bakugo pointed at the sky. He's a glass cannon that's already fired. He's going to run out of ammo. And when he does, we're going to be there to catch his stupid ass. Miles away the interstate, Izuku landed on a billboard overlooking the highway. He fell to one knee, clutching his chest. The breakpoint output was taking its toll. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the deep, grinding ache of his bones. Heart rate 180. The fourth user monitored. You need to rest, ninth. You need calories. No rest, Izuku whispered. He looked down at the highway. A convoy of prison transport trucks was moving, escorted by pro-heroes. Danger sense flared. Not from the trucks. From the bridge ahead, a sniper, Lady Nagant, Izuku deduced. He forced his body to stand. The black whip tendrils creaked, tightening around his shattered femurs. Okay, Izuku said to the empty night. Let's work. He didn't look back at the city. He didn't look back at Yue. He locked the memory of Uraraka's tears and Bakugo's rage into a box in his mind and threw away the key. The green ghost leaped from the billboard, diving into the abyss.